Well, today I'm in the studio with Mark Turner. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Yes, I'm honored to be here. This is fantastic.
I'm honored to have you. Very excited to speak with you today and get your perspective on a lot of things. And before we get into that, if I'm going to hit the quick bio on you, and then you can fill in the gaps for me or for the listeners. But you're a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu studio owner. You own a BJJ school. I think you're out in Chicago. Is that right?
Yeah, in the suburbs of Chicago. Yes, correct.
Yeah. How cold is it out there right now?
It's not that bad, actually. It's been snowing today. It's a little damp, but it's actually been warmer than usual. So I'll take it.
Yeah, same here. We got this tropical type storm that's moved in here. It's odd, but let's move past that. So we've got you served in the United States Marine Corps for over 10 years. You finished up there basically in reconnaissance, and you're the co-founder of the Overwatch Foundation, which provides humanitarian aid and during such things as natural disasters and some other things that we're going to talk about today. That's a huge project for you. I know a big passion for you, which is really why I wanted to have you on today. And I think the thing that people are going to find very interesting about you is that you've made 5 trips to Ukraine with the Overwatch Foundation, and you have some firsthand experience and perspective that I hope the listeners will take some time to listen to, digest, and hope that helps them understand maybe what's going on the ground over there a little bit differently than what they may be getting from, say, the media or otherwise. So that's the quick bio, man. What did I leave out? Anything?
I don't know. I like long walks on the beach and
that's what I was looking for.
And ski, that kind of stuff,
So let's talk a little bit just about your background. Maybe you just talk kind of like how you got to where you're at. Like I said, I gave the bio, but maybe you talk a little bit about yourself for a little while. You can start and finish wherever you want, dude.
Yeah, I was born in Scotland. It was a cold, dark night. No, I'm not going to go that far back. But yeah, born in Scotland and moved over to the States when I was young. We did the whole high school thing here and all that. I ended up joining the Marine Corps and, had the military career thing, was involved in the global war on terrorism. All through that, I actually was in the Marine Corps before 9/11. So, just crazy time. And the last 20 years now that's pretty much over has obviously been so influential to so many people for basically a generation, So did that. And when I got out of the Marine Corps, I had kind of a lot of the same problems that a lot of other people had, just kind of very disconnected and angry and just issues with stuff that goes on from, being deployed and whatever, right? All those, they're legit things that we all have, but they're also crybaby things that, if we can do that job, in my opinion, is we need to figure out a way to resolve those issues when we get back as well. And I know that there are a ton of great organizations out there now helping people, and people are getting help, and the stories of people getting help are incredible. And, podcasts like yours and stuff get that message out. And I think that's great for other veterans to hear, like, wait a minute, that guy got help, or that guy had similar situations to me. And there is a thing for me. But I remember for me, it was basically, hey, do you need any help? And you're like, okay, if I say no, I can get out of this meeting with these people. And, I think the military's always had resources for people, but I wasn't interested, not at that time, so I kind of struggled with that. I disconnected from everybody, from everything as far as military and other veterans and veterans groups and things like that, and tried to find, I actually took a job in finance and just tried to find a bunch of stuff to it's funny, somebody asked me about this recently, and I said, instead of trying to turn the page on my life, I was trying to close the book and find another book to open.
Wow.
And I don't think that was the correct way of doing things. I think if I would have plugged into other veterans who especially were going through what I was going through, it would have helped me a lot more. So, the quick PSA is, if you're listening to this and you are one of those people, get back connected with guys. It doesn't even have to be the guys that you served with specifically, but we will help you. Veterans will help other veterans, especially now after learning so much and hearing some of these statistics of people that kind of pull the plug on themselves because of some of these problems. There's no need for that. But I took a job contracting as well. I was a surveillance contractor for almost 4 years, and I liked that, but that came with a lot of the same problems, and just kind of was lost for a little bit. And got myself through that. I didn't really reach out to anybody. I just kind of tried to figure it out on my own, and it was kind of rough, similar to what we hear tons of other stories. And after I'd reconnected with the community and reconnected with some people, and figured that whole piece out in my life, and came at peace with myself, and started growing as a person, and having a career and family and all this. I was really kind of fast forward to the Afghanistan time when the pullout was happening, and that situation is what started the Overwatch Foundation before it really was even the Overwatch Foundation.
Okay, so that was sort of the impetus. Before we get to that, I just want to thank you for acknowledging what you said there. I did not serve. Anybody that listens to the show, though, knows I'm hugely passionate on the support for mental, psychological, and emotional health for our veterans and the members of our LEO first responder community. And so for those people that are listening right now, I might want to clear this up for them. Not to confuse Mark with the Overwatch Collective, which is some buddies of mine here in the Bay Area. They're veterans, also LEO, that run a nonprofit to provide additional dollars for counseling for family members of first responders in the military community. So there's like an overlap here. I don't want people to be confused with that. Like where is Mark coming from versus where are the Overwatch Collective guys? It's Overwatch Foundation. So the Overwatch Foundation sort of came up only 2 years ago now as we're pulling out of Afghanistan. How did it start, man?
Yeah, so I was, there was no Overwatch Foundation, nothing like that, but I was contacted by some guys that were looking to go over and help with the pullout in Afghanistan. There were many groups that did that, and there were groups that got in and did stuff. There were groups that, got left on tarmac and or this, that, or the next thing. And so there was a lot going on. And so I was down working with a group that was trying to spin up out of Virginia Beach, and was down there for a weekend, like having meetings and planning and just kind of seeing what was going to go on. And I had come back, and it was like Sunday morning, and it was right at the time when Hurricane Ida was approaching.
Right.
And I was sitting there watching I was thinking about everything that had happened over the weekend, and I was sitting there watching the coverage of the hurricane. And I was like, I wonder if we could get some guys together and just go down and do all the stuff that people either can't do or won't do, like right at 0 hour when the hurricane hits, and helping people. And I had never done anything like that before.
Like what? What are you talking about?
Water type rescues, water rescues, just kind of being that first response type stuff, just to help people that stuck around. I mean, after being to a few of these hurricanes now, my initial response is if a hurricane's coming anywhere near you, just leave. Go on vacation for a week, go stay with family somewhere else. Like, don't try and ride it out. It's just not worth it, everything's going to get destroyed whether you're there or not. You might as well not be there, kind of thing. But go down and help people that stick around, and I really didn't know. I didn't study hurricanes. I didn't study first response. I had no plan to do this. It just being in that mindset for the Afghanistan thing. I just kind of was sitting there. I was like, I wonder if we could do something like that, but I didn't have a plan, right? I'd always liked watching hurricane coverage and natural disaster coverage just for the, just watching the sheer power and kind of it's unbelievable, right? Like what hurricane.
Mother Nature's a thing, man.
It's unbelievable, and it's fascinating. But it's not like I was some weather junkie. It's not like I was some like adventure junkie to go and help people. There's something I never did before. But I sent a text out to a guy, and he's kind of one of those just really hardline guys. Like if he talks, everybody listens. He doesn't talk much, and he's just a savage, right? So I said, hey, what do you think about getting a group together and going down to the hurricane and just seeing what we can do to help? And he just sent back one word reply, and it was just yes. Right.
Mm.
So I was like, and I sent like this big, not a big message, but I sent him a message like, what do you think about this? And we could do this and maybe get involved here. And he just sent back yes. So I was like, okay, I guess we're doing this now. Like, I can't go back to
Right.
him and it was just an idea.
Exactly.
I wasn't really serious, you know. And so yeah, we threw a few guys together in a truck, and we made, it was funny. We made like a run to Bass Pro Shop and got like rope, and we got rope, we got some MREs, and we just got some silly stuff, right? Like it was ridiculous, and we had no plan. We piled into a truck and we drove south. We didn't even know where we were going. We knew we were going to Louisiana, but we just drove south. We had 18-hour car drive, and so it was like in 18 hours we'll figure this out. We'll make a plan in 18 hours. We're not going to sit. We're not going to sit in the Chicago area for 18 hours and make a plan. We're going to head down there and we'll work it as we go. And that kind of was the beginning of what became Overwatch. We were not Overwatch. We were just at that time 4 guys in a truck and, with wet weather gear and just headed south.
Tell me about how you were received down there when you showed up. I mean, it's just 4 guys in a truck. Were the federal agencies there yet? What was happening? How did you assimilate in? Like, what happened?
Yeah, so what we did was we got our hands on the way down there. We got our hands on an app, and that we don't use it anymore. I can't even remember the name of it. But what it was, it had like, okay, so if you were in a crisis area, you could go on this app. You could create like a request, like I need help with this, I need help with that. It would create a ticket on the app, like a little red flag in your area where you were. And then if I had the app and I was going to respond to something like this, I could see where you were. I could click on that ticket. I could take that job essentially and then come and help you, right? I could communicate with you through the app. We didn't use the app for that. What we did was we just looked where the heaviest concentration of red tickets was.
That makes sense.
Said, okay, well, looks like stuff's happening there. Because it was weird, you're driving, you're in and out of cell service and all this. And so we just didn't know how good the app was going to be. A lot of these, I'd never heard of it before. It wasn't like the FEMA app or Red Cross or something. It was some kind of third-party app that, but we saw those tickets on there. We're like, okay, we'll just go there. There's stuff happening. We'll figure it out. And we couldn't get into that area. The overpasses and the exits of the expressway were completely like covered in water. So we couldn't get in there following the GPS. We couldn't get there. So we took a detour and it was about 15 miles away from New Orleans. So we said, okay, let's go to New Orleans and regroup and we'll figure out something from there. And when we went there, it was very strange. You're talking about how were we received. It was like the city it was like a ghost town. It was like one of these zombie movies or something. There was nobody there. It was bone dry, right? It was bone dry. No electricity or anything. It was very creepy. And we were right downtown. We were right next to the Superdome. And it was like, okay, let's figure this out. And so we found a way in, like the back way into that county, into that town. There that we were trying to get into on the first.
All the red tickets were, gotcha.
We couldn't get in off the expressway. We found a back way in, and we actually, first gas station we saw a lot of people at this gas station. So we pulled in there, and it just so happened that the governor was kind of coming by, and he kind of had a little command center that he was going to be involved in the hurricane and all this. So there was media there. And we just walked right up to one of the TV guys, the local TV guys, and said, look, we're down here to help. Tell us the whole layout of this place. Where are all the key places? Where's the infrastructure? Where's the police, fire? Where are some of the hot spots that you know of that's going to be in trouble and all this? And that guy, he was so good. He gave us so much good information, and we were able to basically set up our initial day and our tasks to go and contact people and stuff just from what he told us. And it would have been a lot tougher. But again, it's like if that guy wasn't there, it would have been more difficult. But the whole thing is you look for opportunity, and when you find
Mm,
the opportunity, you just smash it with a hammer and take
yeah.
advantage, and that's what happened. And we just kept, we would go and we would help one person, it would flip on to the next. But it was weird because when he saw us, he's like, so wait a minute, who are you guys though?
Right.
And then we're telling, like, we're not anybody, we're just us. Like, because we couldn't even say at
Four
that point we were the Overwatch Foundation or
four
anything.
dudes
There
in a
was
truck,
no,
man. Yeah.
yeah, they were just, yeah, like some guys in a truck that are down here to help. And then, of course, you could see their first thought is like,
Right.
I get it, but are you even going to be able to help? Like, okay, good.
Or are you down here? Do you have other? Yeah. Do you have other intentions? I mean, there's
Right,
a lot of looting and things
right.
going on down there. I imagine you guys are even
Oh yeah,
seeing.
it was wild, and we saw some of that too. But I mean, we started then helping. We were clearing roads for the fire department and stuff because they're in a tough situation. Because let's say there's a bunch of downed trees or crazy stuff in the road blocking the road. Yeah, they have a big fire engine, but they can't risk that truck going down, right? So
Right.
they can't really risk themselves being injured clearing roads and all this. It's not really their gig. And as much as you're like, well, come on, man, that's like disaster area, you need to jump in and help. They kind of have to preserve themselves. And so we just said, look, we'll go ahead of you, we'll clear these roads, we'll figure this out. We had one chainsaw, and we had a bunch of chains and ropes, and we just kind of went to work doing some of that for them so they could get through. And we just kind of spun one thing into the next, and just we got a bunch of stuff done. We were helping people get out of their houses, and some people with some first aid because they were trying to get out of their houses and would end up cutting themselves, or it was just one thing to the next. And it kind of, after that, it kind of made me think like, maybe we're on to something here with this. We have capable guys that can problem solve, can basically high level problem solve and be active as we're trying to, just go to a place that we don't know and make stuff happen. It's not easy to do, but I just saw that we could do it. We had the ability to do it, and maybe there was something there.
What maybe talk a little bit about what you actually saw. I mean, you mentioned getting people out of houses. What was the biggest problem, or what was the biggest thing you guys had to work through to help somebody? I mean, you mentioned helping, the first responders get to where they need to go. And I understand risk assessment. I mean, there's, any one of these guys has to really weigh the odds and make some really tough decisions there. You guys aren't faced with those same restrictions. So are you running into places or going places that they're not going? And if so, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I think at that point too, there's only so much, right? I mean, if you have a local police department or local fire department, there's only so much they could do. So, we found a lot of issues where trees had fallen onto people's houses. And so, they're still in that house. That's all they have. It's the only shelter they have. But that house is, now severely like structurally compromised. And I'm
Mm.
not a structural engineer, but I can tell you if a giant tree lands on your house and that house looks like it's, gonna fall over, I mean, you can
Right.
see it, right? And there was one couple. We had just helped this one guy. He had, you won't believe it when I tell you, he had 4 vehicles on his property. 4 separate trees had fallen and destroyed all 4 of his vehicles.
Oh my God.
And
Wow.
I mean, he couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe it. He had a motorcycle, he had a truck, he had a couple cars. Some were parked near the back, some were parked out front, and it was 4 separate trees had fallen on his. And so he was
Wow.
stuck. And then another tree had fallen in his house, and he couldn't really get out of his house. He had tried to climb out of a window, and he had cut himself real bad. And you could just see he's just dejected. There's no power. It's hot.
Defeated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the heat index was like 106, and you could just see. And we showed up. We're like, hey man, we'll help you. We'll get some of this stuff off of you. Like your cars, we're not messing with that, but because they're useless now. But we'll get the
Right.
stuff out of your door and give you some kind of doorway where you can get in and out of your house. And so we had finished up with him, and everyone was so appreciative. They couldn't believe it. They kept asking us, "Are we FEMA? Are we the Red Cross?" and all this, and we're like, "No," And and someone came over and said, "Hey, can you guys come down the block and help this family?" So we said, "Yeah." We walked down there, and it was an older couple. They were both very obese, like very obese and disabled, right? Like they couldn't walk. The woman needed like a buggy to get around,
Okay.
like a motorized wheelchair kind of thing, and they just were
I get
old
it.
and sick and all this. Well, a tree had fallen on their house and the roof had collapsed. Like the roof had collapsed then. And I mean, it was just getting crazy. It looked like the whole rest of it. I mean, you're standing there in their living room and you look up and there's no roof and there's a giant tree over there. So we tried to tell them, like, look, you need to get out of here. You need to go stay somewhere else. You can't stay in this house. And it was the same response with everybody at that point. They just kind of were like, I don't have anywhere to go.
Right.
And kind of too late at that point. You know, I think there's that time. What I've learned is like you can get out, and then there's a time where it comes where it's now you're just here, and whatever happens,
desperation.
You just have to ride it out. And you know, if it goes kind of post-apocalyptic, well, you just have to figure that out as you go. And you know, we kind of were. It would have been easy just to be like, well, we can't help you, right? If you're not going to leave, we can't really help you.
Yep.
But we weren't going to do that. So we got a ladder. We jumped up on their roof, and the roof was not stable. I mean, I have pictures and videos of our guy James up there trying to figure out this roof, and the whole thing's moving. And we ended up cutting, like, we were estimating the pieces of log that we were cutting off, probably around 800 to 1,000 pounds that we were cutting off in sections.
With the one chainsaw.
You know, one chainsaw, and look, we're standing on a ladder kind of half on this roof. And when you cut this thing, I mean, it could shift and move and all this. And I mean, you know, it was so crazy. We had a rope tied to it.
Nightmare.
We had a rope tied to it, and then the rope was tied to me. And then as he's cutting it, I'm running the opposite direction, because when it falls, if it falls and bounces the wrong way, it's gonna take him out. And you know, my hope is me running. This is just idiot logic now. Me running maybe changes that direction enough to, and it worked. I mean, look, it worked. It could have went totally sideways, but it's just, it doesn't matter how we solve this problem. We need to figure out a way. And that's what we came up with. And we were just going to pivot off of that if that didn't work. And we got that whole thing off the roof to at least where, like, well, it's not going to fall through your roof. And if the building still wasn't safe, but at least now that's not going to fall on you and crush you. And, you know, it was just kind of doing little stuff like that. There was a guy, he flagged us down. We were driving. And I mean, there's power lines all, like, kind of like in the movies, you see these power lines are like snakes, like bouncing around on the street, and we're driving, you know, and it's like, all right, this is crazy. You know, and it's raining, it's crazy raining and all this. It's a hurricane, you know, and someone flagged us down and was like, hey, there's an old guy. He lives like 2 miles off the road. You'll see where his driveway goes. He's 2 miles back there. He lives by the swamp, and we haven't seen or heard of him, you know, from him. He might be in trouble. So we go down there, and it just so happened the guy had just walked out from the woods, from the swamp. And he said his whole house was up to like his belly button in water. His daughter and 2 grandkids were on the second floor to be out of the water, and he was trying to get gas. And like my first thought was, come on, man, you need to get out of here for sure. Like you need to get in your truck, and he didn't even know if there was gas, which there was none, you know, but you just see these people and it's like, that guy's not going anywhere. He's like, yeah, this is the 6th time I've done this. And he was happy to walk. He's happy to walk through belly button deep water through a swamp. Well, I can't tell that guy anything, you know.
No, it's wild. It's wild. I was supposed to go out to Florida a couple months back when the hurricane hit. I think it was back in October, and it was October, I believe, right? And my plans ended up. Yeah, it changed last minute, but I was talking to the guys on the other end, and I was like, oh man, like, I don't know, it looks pretty hairy. I don't think we're gonna make it. And at that point, it was like rated as like a hurricane category 2 or 3. It was early as it was moving its way up. And he's basically like, look, man, we don't get excited around here until it hits like 5 status. And you mentioned like how many of these things hit, that you've seen. They hit that area all the time. So, and a lot of them, while they might not be getting over exaggerated. I mean, I'm sitting in the Bay Area of California right now. We had this wild storm that kind of moved off the coast, or moved in the coast, and like parts 50 miles ahead of us, or up the peninsula from us here, are flooded and underwater. And we're kind of down here going, yeah, we got a little bit of rain. So it's like geographically where you are, if you weren't right in the middle of it, like on the last 10 hurricanes, you're like, dude, I'm not leaving my house. I'm not packing everything up. I'm not getting out of here. Like, this is not that big a deal. But in this in these cases, you get these people that are like, well, I rolled the dice again, and this time, I hit snake eyes and I'm done, kind of
And
thing.
that's it.
But they have nowhere to go. They still have nowhere to go.
Right.
So I kind of understand I want to try and understand the mentality, but I've never been through one of these things before.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't live in those kind of areas, but based on what I've seen, I mean, we were at the one there in Florida too. We went down, we made 2 trips down there. And, the whole thing is, and this is just me talking after the fact as an outsider, I don't live in those areas. Like, let's say you roll the dice and it does hit you. Okay. You've been through 10 of them, let's say, but this one is the one that destroys everything. You are essentially going to be camping now at your house because you don't have power. Your house is destroyed, all this. You're going to be camping there for however long anyway. So even if you don't have a place to go, and let's say you can't afford a hotel, let's say my advice is go on vacation. If a hurricane's coming, grab your family and be like, come on, guys, let's go. We're going, we're going to go somewhere for a week or whatever and just have
anywhere
fun.
But here. Yeah.
We'll deal with this when we get back, but let's say you can't do that. Then my advice is we'll go somewhere else and go camp for a few days because you're you're at least giving yourself the safety now that you're not going to drown, nothing's going to fall on you, you're not going to get electrocuted, right. You're not going to get cut, like especially with kids and all that kind of stuff. My advice is just get out of the area. If it costs you a little bit of extra money to do that, and it's probably going to be worth it because it's unbelievable when you see some of this stuff. Florida was the same. I mean, we were, in the Fort Myers area, and you're just looking around and you're like, it's like a nuclear bomb went off. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. So you guys were down there for that too.
Yep. Yeah.
We
made 2 trips. Yeah. We made 2 trips to that one. We went down right away. So when we were in Louisiana, we were there, from the beginning, and the situation deteriorated. It was 2 very different situations. The one in Louisiana, everything was deteriorating. People couldn't get fuel and all this, and it was getting kind of dicey. It was getting kind of crazy, and we were running out of fuel as well, and we were at a point where it's like, look, if we don't get out by the time our fuel hits a certain level, because I think it was like 140 miles or something to the closest gas station.
Working gas station.
Yeah, like we'll become part of the problem if we can't get out of here, and then we're no good to anybody. So we went out and we were pretty ticked off about that and we took extra fuel with us. It's just that, you're there for however many days and stuff just deteriorates and you're using fuel and there's plenty more to do, but you have to get out of there. And like I said, we were one truck. We were just one truck. We don't have this big infrastructure or anything like this. It was just us. And so that whole way back home, we were just like stewing, and it was really pissing us off. And then I remember we got home, it was super early in the morning, like 6 a.m. or something. And then by noon, it was like, nah, let's just go back. Let's just get a bunch of fuel, get a bunch of food and water, and we're just going to turn around and drive right back. We'll go the 18 hours right back down. And that's what, and I called everybody that was on the first trip and said, what do you think? And everybody said, let's do it, and we grabbed an extra truck. We grabbed a couple extra guys and we grabbed an extra truck. And so we had 2 trucks on that second trip. And, we fed over 1,000 people, fed and watered over 1,000 people. And we just were stopping. It was so funny. My credit cards were getting cut off. We were driving down I-55 through like multiple states and just stopping at Walmarts. And we would walk in and I'd be like, hey, I need a pallet of water. And the guy would be like, oh, there's cases of water if you go down this aisle and turn. I said, man, no, you're saying cases.
I need a pallet.
Right. We need to get on the same page. I need a manager. I need something. And they don't know how, they're kind of like, what the heck are you guys doing? And we went in there and we were thinking, okay, let's get food. Then you're like, okay, good idea. And then you're thinking, well, what? Right? Like what kind of food? And we decided on those Chef Boyardee pull tops.
Okay.
Right?
Because easy to get into.
Right? Easy to get into. You don't even need a spoon, right? You can just eat it right out of the can. You don't have to heat it up or anything like that. And so we just were going up and down the aisles, just like with shopping carts, just clearing.
Emptying it.
Yeah. And then we'd go to the next Walmart. Well, and it looks just like what a criminal would do, going right down the highway into multiple states, just clear. I'm hitting item limits on my, and this was all on my personal credit card. Like we were trying to we were trying to raise money on GoFundMe just through the network that I have at my jiu-jitsu gym. And I think we raised like $4,000 or something, all said and done. But I told the guys, I said, all the fuel, everything we need, we'll just put on my credit card. I believe what we're doing is a good thing. I think people will support it. And if not, I'm not going to ask you for a dime. I just want your time and I want your effort, right? And I said, I'll put it all on my back. And so we're going down and I'm, hitting item limits and dollar limits and everything on my credit cards. And then they started locking up my cards. And so then I'm on the phone to somewhere in Micronesia. And they're like, Mr. Turner, we need you to verify that. I'm like, I'm not verifying nothing. Open my account, and I'm freaking out. We have, trying to get thousands of dollars of food and water, and they're, locking up my credit card. It's so funny. So it reminded me, that scene in Transformers when he doesn't have cell service or something, and they're fighting the Transformer over in the desert, and then he's calling to try and get the cell phone plan or something. That's what it was. Screaming at this person in the parking lot, and
oh my God.
Of some random Walmart. So that's what we did. We just filled up a bunch of U-Hauls. We rented U-Hauls on the way down, and that was the other thing. We're like, we had so much planning on this. It was so ridiculous. But looking back, it really helped me confirm that we could do this. It was like, okay, if we rent a U-Haul in Chicago and we fill it with food and water, that's going to hump us when it comes to our gas mileage. And we're going to spend a fortune on gas. So we're trying to find out where is the closest place to Louisiana where we can still get a U-Haul and
load it up
and be able to load it up. Right. So there's all this logistic planning that had to go into it that we worked through. And again, it just kind of gave me confirmation because we could have made so many mistakes that we just didn't make because of the guys that we had. And that's what really made me think that we could start something with this. Was it's not me, it's the guys, and it's the collective, everybody putting their heads together and solving these problems and making stuff happen. It was, that hurricane really kind of cemented like we could do something with this.
So let's talk about the guys. I mean, you talked about it's 4 dudes in a truck, that are just trying to problem solve and make things happen. And they're resilient and tough and, grinding things out, not really knowing what the end's going to look like, not being afraid of that, just moving forward. Who are these guys, man? I don't know if you can name names. I don't know if that's an important part of it, but where are they coming from? How do you know these dudes? Are they from the jiu-jitsu school? Like, what's up?
Yeah. So the way we have it structured is, we use for a lot of our big missions, like the Ukraine stuff and some of the stuff we're going to be doing in Africa and some of the you would label as the crazy stuff, I guess. It's all former special operations guys. It obviously started off with some guys I know. Now it's turned into some, guys that know some of the guys I know and through different networking and being able to get guys in, and we vet everybody and they are who they say they are, and they have the backgrounds they say they have. And, and I like it to be, we do have some guys that I had never met until they started doing stuff with us, but the majority of our guys, we know them, right? It's very internal. Like, hey, I know a guy, or this guy would be good. I served with him, those are mainly the guys that we use. We do have a support kind of structure of volunteers that, are either, some of them are regular, conventional military and are veterans, and some of them are not. Some of them are just really savage civilians who have their head on straight and can help in some kind of a support role, and help kind of what we call the task force teams when they go down range or they go to a location. But the reason we will use soft guys is not so much just because, we're cool and all this kind of stuff. It's really just because if you have that kind of background, I know that you can think the way I need you to think. I know you can perform the way I need you to perform. When you're working 18-hour days at a hurricane and it's hot and wet, and now we have to get up, or you have to stand post at night because there's looters going around, and there's looters around, and we're sitting there with 2 trucks full of food, water, and gasoline. I can't have you falling asleep after you've worked, 16, 18 hours a day, and I need you to stay up for an hour. I know you're going to stay up for an hour, right? And
Right.
if you do need to jump in the water, or you do need to climb up on that house, or you do need to find a creative way to solve a problem, if you have that background, you're going to be able to figure that out. I mean, I've seen that for many years, and it's working for us in the in the jobs that we're doing with Overwatch, especially overseas. It'd be very difficult to take a regular civilian and do what we do in Ukraine.
I have the distinct opportunity, in a very coming from a very different background, to talk to guys like you and talk to guys from the special operations community or the teams within different federal agencies or even local agencies for that matter. I consider myself very privileged in that sense. And there are a lot of people that do this, and the good ones, and what I mean by that is they're all good ones, but there's a certain type of person that excels at this, um, that performs, and you just describe that person, and deep in the DNA or in the roots, they're driven by this desire and this compelling need to serve. And it's man, what I've seen and the stories we've read about what happened in Afghanistan and going in to try to get people out. I mean, what you've just described in terms of loading up your buddies and driving down in a truck to Louisiana and into Florida to help people. It's from this deep desire to help other people.
Right.
I think it's a distinct. Again, I said distinct privilege that I have, but I also think it is very American in terms of going in to try and help those in need, whether it's here or somewhere else. And to some extent, it's a character flaw, right? Because it can get you into some trouble sometimes. It can be considered a character flaw. But dude, it is one thing to get in your truck and drive 18 hours after a hurricane hits or while a hurricane is hitting into places like Louisiana and Florida from Chicago. It is quite another to get on an airplane and 18 hours later be landing in a foreign country in almost a very similar situation. Like, well, we're not quite sure what's going to happen when we get there, but we'll figure it out when we do. And so as you're figuring out, like, hey, I think this, before it's the Overwatch, I think there's something to this. How do we make this happen and do something bigger? And you mentioned the crazy stuff. There are some, I mean, some might consider it very crazy, but based on how you've described your friends and your colleagues, I don't think it is crazy. I actually think it's very well thought out, and what we've seen it be as is very productive. And so I wonder if we could kind of shift into that, because we mentioned at the top of the show that you've been to Ukraine now 5 times. And with very specific goals and intentions on your trips there, and you know, paying things on your own credit card, and basically the same type of framework that you were working from in these hurricanes. I wonder if you could talk about that and maybe set us up for this, because I find the story to be fascinating. But what I find more fascinating is the fact that you've gone back so many times, and this thing, like your trips to Florida, or excuse me, your trips to the South, began to evolve the team and evolve the way you operated and all those things. I'm seeing that evolution now, and I've heard from the original, some of the original stuff that you've put out or given people insight to. I'd love to catch up, but let's catch up the listeners first to what it is the hell I'm talking about.
Yeah. So after the hurricanes, and again, this is like before the Ukraine thing, we did get involved in Afghanistan, the pullout. It was, we did a lot of stuff stateside, because after the hurricanes, it was like, okay, hurricane season's over. What's going on now? Like, if we're gonna do something here, what else can we do? Are we just gonna be natural disaster type response, or we have these guys again, and what they did was, after the pullout, they brought all these Afghans back, and they were putting them at different military installations all over the country, right? And they were housing them, processing them, and it was crazy. You had the State Department, you had the big army, and you had all these NGOs that were trying to work with this, and it was just crazy, you can imagine. And so we got involved with another NGO and said, hey, we'll come up and help. And we would go up to Fort McCoy, Wisconsin. There was, I think, 13,000 Afghans there. And they had them living in like the big squad bays and the big squad bay buildings up there. And, you know, it's, they did a fantastic job, but there were problems, right? You had the 101st Airborne there. That's not their job, and that's it's not their job. It's not their mission to
You mean to
basically
provide humanitarian aid effectively,
exactly
right?
right. So they're kind of frustrated, and you know they were kind of pulled to go do that, and then the State Department basically we were trying to process these people. A lot of them had the visas, and a lot of them didn't, and there's family members. So they're putting like single guys in with families. They're mixing tribes of people, and there was like infighting with all these people, and they're trying to hold these little shuras and ask them and find out stuff. It just was kind of crazy. So what we did was we took a team up and we helped with some of the humanitarian stuff and connecting with the people. But then we just went into the village. We called it the village that they had there, and just started talking to people. And it was very like, let's just walk in and make contacts with these Afghans. There were guys there, Scott, I kid you not. There were guys there that spoke better English than you and me. And you know, there were guys there that had worked with the army or worked with American special operations for 15
Years.
years, you know,
I bet, yeah.
and that guy was basically American, and you know and now he's stuck in this place.
Camp,
He
right?
can't get out. They were shitting in sinks and they were breaking the sinks off the wall. And you know
Wow.
the State Department's like, well, what the hell? These it's causing a big problem. But it's like, yeah, but they've never seen a toilet. Some of these people have
Right.
never seen a toilet. They've never seen a sink, and you just put them in a squad bay with a bathroom at each end and be like, okay, go ahead, guys. And they just don't
What'd you
know.
think was going to happen? Yeah. What'd
And
they
then
think was
just
going to happen?
so much little stuff there. We found out that there was a woman there who had ran to be president of Afghanistan, living in the village with all these other people. It's like, why don't you take her and why don't you have her organize some groups and some, let them kind of have their own little thing going on here while they're going to be here for however many months. And some of them are being told this. So we just tried to bridge that gap and trying to talk to some of the State Department people, trying to talk to some of the other NGOs that had ideas of what their process would be, and then taking that into the village and trying to help those people understand, okay, you're here now, and here's kind of what it's going to look like. I mean, there were some of them where, I mean, they could have literally walked off that base and worked and set themselves up, and everything was going to be good for them. There were other ones that needed a ton of help, and all they kind of, I think all they focused on was the set. We need them to check these boxes. And so we did some work up there. And for me, going back to how the Overwatch thing, for me, that kind of just showed, okay, now we can work with other organizations. Now we can work a little bit with the State Department. Now we can interact with the military. And it was just another piece of, yeah, we're not jumping in the water. We're not clearing roads. We're not handing out water bottles
Right.
or decants. But this is another thing we can do with the people that we have, and it just kind of added to the snowball of there's still no Overwatch Foundation at this point. And we made a bunch of trips up there. We did bring them clothes and raise some money and did all this, and it just really started going. And then my daughter got sick soon after that, like in November. She had a brain tumor, and obviously we had to deal with that. They had to take out, she had surgeries and recovery, and it was a nightmare, as you can imagine, right? So
I can't even imagine how
yeah,
tough that must have been, man.
it's crazy. It was an amazing situation. I got to see how tough she is. I got to see how dark like a situation that is, and in sick kids, and seeing a hospital full of them, and I got to see some amazing people, some of those doctors and surgeons that just do like they're just the highest level, like in the world at Laurie Children's Hospital in Chicago at that kind of stuff. And you're like, so I mean, I learned a lot through that. Obviously, hurt a lot through that, but that
Yeah.
was it took my attention away from what we were planning and trying to spin up and all this. And so, January had come, stuff had calmed down a little bit, and I have a friend at the Jiu-Jitsu Academy who is Ukrainian, and this
Okay.
was the time when all the Ukraine stuff with Russia was
Starting to heat up.
and all this talk and all this, and he was concerned. And then right when the war started, like the first day when the war started, obviously he changed, right? I mean, his family's still there. He hadn't been home in 11 years. He's brand new American, just got naturalized, went through the whole process. Um, and he was kind of distraught, head never out with the phone, never out with the TV. And I said, let's go to the range, because again, he's brand new American. He's getting involved in the concealed carry and his rights and all this kind of stuff. And so I was teaching him how to shoot a little bit. So let's go to the range and we'll just blow off some steam and work on some stuff, and it'll get your mind away from everything for a few hours, and so we did that. And this was right when the war started, and we were
So what are
leaving.
we talking? Is this like February of
Yeah,
2021
this is like
or 22? Sorry.
February 21st or 22nd, like
Okay.
or sorry, 25th or 26th. The war started on the 24th. So this is like day 1, day 2 of the war. And he said, I think I'm going to go back. We're standing there. It's freezing cold in the parking lot. And my first thought when he said that was like, now I'm going to have to stand out here in the cold and talk to this guy for a little bit. Right? Like that was my first thought. I'm like, it's freezing, you leave the range and you're like, okay, I would say a quick goodbye and get to your car and, it's
Right.
get
Yeah.
up. And if you've never been to Chicago in February, don't, right?
I've been there, man. I used to work out there a bit. Yeah. It's awful.
So then I'm like, Yuri, you can't go. You don't know, we don't know what's going on. It's brand new. And I didn't know at this point, I didn't know where he was from in Ukraine. I didn't know, he could have been from the same place where Vladimir Putin takes a crap every morning. I had no idea, right?
Yeah. By the way, how do you even get there? Like, I mean, from what I remember, it was mass exodus. People were trying to get on planes and get the hell out of there as fast as they can, and get out of Russia specifically. The Russian, especially the young men, military age men, were like, we got to get out of here because they're going to send us to the front. But I mean, could you even get there at the time? Would be a question that I had. But that's a
yeah.
I mean, I get it. My family's there. I feel like I need to be there. But what the hell am I going to do when I get there?
Yeah, and I mean, for him, he has no experience, never been in the military. He just wanted to go back, and I probably could have convinced him that, look, man, it's not a good idea. But that's not my job. He's a grown ass man, right? And
Yeah.
if he wants to go back and see his family, I mean, look, if I wanted to go back and see my family, you're not going to talk me out of it, right? And
Yep. Who are
and
you to say? Yeah.
it wouldn't be your job to. So I told him, I said, look, if this is something you really want to do, I said, I'll help you. Right. And I didn't know what that meant. I was like, I'll help you. I'll at least be able to make sure you get back safe and that you get back here safe. And I'll take care of you while you're there. I said, let me see if I can get a couple of guys together and maybe we can pick up some medical supplies and do something for the foundation. And at that point, we had an idea to make the Overwatch Foundation, but we hadn't even signed any of the paperwork or anything yet. And we definitely, now we are a 501c3. At that point, like I said, we were not, right? And so I went home and started, calling a couple people. And I called Zach, another recon Marine, and said, hey, man, we have to help Yuri. And he just said, all right, let's do it. And there was, it's just like, okay, so let's figure out where we can fly into and how quickly we can go and what we can take and what we need. And again, we have this long travel period. We'll plan on the way kind of thing and learn as much as we can about Ukraine and the area and what's happening as possible. And that's what we did. We sat there. I bought plane tickets to a neighboring country, and we it's like, okay, so now we're in a neighboring country, hundreds of miles away from the border. How do we?
You're so close. It's like horseshoes, right? You're in the vicinity. You're getting warmer, but you're not quite there. But I gotta say something, man. I mean, people are gonna be listening to this right now. They're going, "This dude is fucking crazy. Like he's out of his mind." But again, just going back to what I was saying earlier, if you don't know guys like you and the groups of guys that do the things that you do, there is a little bit of crazy in there, but at the same time, it's very controlled, it's very calculated, and there's a sense of confidence that you carry, and that you go into these situations with. One, because you've been in these situations before. You've just articulated that. You just walked us through, the things that you've been through. Plus, you have this history, and so do they, with regard to the special operations. So it isn't crazy. It really is. It ends up being pretty well planned, and you've seen it work already. So why would you be second guessing yourself would be my
Yeah, and I
question.
mean,
But at the same time, what's that conversation like on the airplane? Like, are you guys ever looking at one another going, dude, what the fuck are we even doing here? Like,
no,
how does this,
it was
what are we
very funny.
doing?
Yeah, it was very funny because like, I mean, I had worked on the Mexico and Central America contract doing surveillance and stuff. So I was running around Juarez by myself and doing some stuff. And so I've been in weird places with a very small group and dangerous places. I wasn't worried about any of that. I mean, I knew, especially if I had another guy with me, right? Like it was just Zach and I that took Yuri on the first trip, but I knew like, okay, if I have Zach, another recon guy, and Zach's an incredible man, incredible Marine. It's like, okay, we can do this. Like we just have to figure out how. It wasn't can we do this? It was just, okay, how are we gonna do this? And that was the
Mhm.
thought process. And the crazy thing comes up a lot, and I joke about it, and people talk to me. And my kind of thought is I would be crazy to let my friend who has no experience go by himself. I mean, I think of it like this. If you use me and Zach as an example, and I told Zach, hey, Yuri went to Ukraine by himself. And just that's crazy story. I'd expect Zach to say, well, what do you mean? We didn't go, why didn't we help him? Why
Right.
don't we help him do that? And so I just think it's more crazy to let a guy like that go do that on his own than it is to go with him and help him when you can, and
I think I get
um,
that.
the plane ride was kind of funny because we traveled, we made a stop here in the US. We actually missed a couple flights, like got delays and stuff. And then so we ended up out east and then flew over and all this. And yeah, we're just kind of dealing with that travel problem. And on the plane, we're eating, watching movies and hanging out. And then like, hey man, let's talk about this real quick. And then he and I would plan, here's what we're gonna do. We have to, when we land, we have to watch out for this. And we had a contact that we made in that neighboring country to come and pick us up. And we didn't know the guy.
Okay.
We knew him through somebody. And there's ways of doing that, right? That you learn along the way, I guess. But we made a contact through somebody that we knew, and that person came, picked us up, and drove us. But again, we didn't speak that language. None of us spoke that language in the neighboring country, and trying to communicate with that guy. And we obviously have an agenda that we can't really tell him all the details of. Even if we could speak to him, we wouldn't tell him all the details of. But he still has to be able to facilitate what we need, getting us
Right.
there.
There's got to be some type of like, I believe the term is operational security, right? I
Right.
can't, like,
Right.
it's on a need to know.
And for us, it was just we planned this thing, like I said, in between watching movies and eating on the plane. And it's just kind of like, okay, this popped into my head, let's run it by Zach, or this popped in my head, let me run it by Mark. And it wasn't like we sat there and said, we're gonna have a brainstorming session, we need to think about everything right now. It just kind of was as it came up. And the good thing was we knew when we got there we were gonna be okay because Yuri spoke Ukrainian, obviously. And
Right.
where we were
There's your,
going, where we were going was his hometown. And even though he hadn't been there since he was a lot younger, he still had all his connections, his family, and all that there. And so, we once we landed and we got out of the airport and started heading up, we drove basically all afternoon and all night, and got to the border super early in the morning, like 2 3 a.m. And because we made stops, we basically were stopping at all these roadside pharmacies and just going in,
okay.
and we were grabbing everything that could be used as like an IFAC or anything that could be used in a combat medical situation.
All right.
We would walk in and like gauze, for instance. We'd walk in and be like, do you have any gauze? And the little lady in there would be like, okay, yeah, we have a little thing of gauze. And we're like, okay, how much of that do you have? Just
I
bring
want
it.
all of it.
Just
Yeah.
want all of it. And I remember it was after 10 p.m. and we're in this pharmacy and we're getting all this stuff and we're checking out and stuff. And the one woman was like having an argument with someone else at the shop, that the employees there. And then they talked to our contact, and he talked to us through the translating app. And it was like, they're really worried that you can't pay for all this. It's like, don't worry, we're not robbing you. Like, I know it's the night, so we're not robbing you. We're gonna pay for all of this.
How's the credit card company responding to this now?
No, yeah. So I learned, right? I had put all the things in there. Traveling internationally, I knew to make the request and tell them, like, look, I'm going to be all over Eastern Europe. Don't block me. So we did that, and when we got to the border, we had to spend the night basically outside in the car because there were some military police in the area, and they're like, look, the border's kind of dodgy because, like you said, it was at that time where the border was like Mos Eisley space station in Star Wars, right? I mean, you had good people there that were trying to get out, you had bad people trying to get out, you had good and bad people trying to get in. It just was very hectic, and at that time, and they were like, look, it's nighttime, we're not letting anybody cross, there's the curfew on the other side, obviously, with the war and all this, so we'll let you cross like around 6 or 7 a.m. or whatever. So we just spent the night on the side of a road in the snow, in the cold. And it was funny because our contact, we had set up a hotel for him. So he was going to he thought, or the plan was, he was going to drop us off. And then after the drive and stuff, he had been driving all night, the poor guy, and he wouldn't let us take a shift or anything like that. He felt like this service to
it was his mission.
Help. Yeah. Oh, it was. Yeah. I'll tell you about his mission in a second too. But we, he thought he was going to drop us off and then go to bed and get a hotel room and all this kind of stuff. It's like, no, man, we're not sleeping out in the snow by ourselves. Like, we need the car. And so he was like, but when we showed up, we're like, well, what does this guy look like? We're at this international airport.
Oh, right. Yeah. It's like showing up on the other end looking for your chauffeur or whatever, your driver.
Yeah. And he's not going to have a sign, right? That it's like, oh, Mark, Zach, Yuri, right? Like, it's not that. And because we were worried that, hey, there might be eyes at this airport and stuff. And I mean, right. You have to make sure you dot every I and cross every T when you're doing this kind of stuff. And, it was so funny. Like, I didn't know who he was, but we saw this guy and he had cargo pants on that were like olive green. He had like an olive green jacket. It was like this was his war, right? Like this was him like helping us. Like it was so fun. It's like, that's the guy, that's him. Like stuck out. So we started calling him Rambo.
I was just gonna say, like, how obvious is this guy? Like, but
it was funny because we were like, how are you gonna know this guy? And we're trying to get a picture of him and stuff, and we couldn't. And then it was just when we saw him, it's like, oh yeah, that's him. Like,
that's our guy.
No doubt, right? So then the next morning we crossed over and we walked across the border in the snow, carrying everything that we had brought with us and everything that we bought along the way. And we just start wandering across the border with all this gear. And same thing, by that time, Yuri had made a bunch of contacts in his hometown. And there were some people there that were helping the war effort. And he told them, like, look, I have a couple guys coming home with me. They have some experience and stuff. If anybody needs any help, we can help. We're going to be here for 9 days or so. And they were like, okay, we can come pick you up. We can get you back to where we were going to go and all this kind of stuff. So we're just wandering across the border and there was this little shack and we're just walking and all of it. We get just past the shack and the window opens and the guy's like, hey, kind of thing. So we turn around and I didn't even know that guy was in there. Like a Ukrainian army soldier was in there manning that little checkpoint thing. And, so he checks our papers and stuff. And then Yuri says to him, like, okay, so where do we go now? And the guy just leans out the window and points. He's like, now you go to Ukraine. And we just were like, all right. So we just kept walking.
We're here.
And then we're walking and I start thinking, because it's cold, right? And I'm from Scotland. I live in Chicago. It's cold, but I don't like the cold. And we've been in a car all night and hungry and just long travel, and I'm getting kind of grumpy at this point. It's like, is this guy really coming to pick us up? And where is he? And where are we supposed to go? And all this. We're just wandering. like in the snow. And all of a sudden, this blue van comes around like this corner and around this driveway thing, and the door opens. It's like, all right, pile all the crap in there. I guess this is the van. And we just hopped in this van and off we
Oh my
went,
God.
you know.
Man, I have to ask a question. I bet other people have too. Like, okay, so you fly overseas, you land in a neighboring country, you travel a couple hundred miles, you go to a border of a war-torn country, you make it across the border. Now you're walking into, again, effectively a war zone. You've got what you've got on your back, plus these supplies. Are you guys armed? I can't imagine that you are. Or did you pick up firearms on the way? Like, what do you? Is it just you're just out there, man?
We were completely slick. I had a cell phone and a flashlight.
Wow, wow.
You know, and yeah, I mean, it's again, you know, there are times when you're overseas. Like I said, when I was contracting, there are times you are running around with, you know, armed or this or that. But there are times too where you have to be completely slick and you have to figure it out. And, you know, again, we were not going there to participate in the war, you know, actively or anything like that. We were going there to take Yuri home, and we were just trying to make contacts to get in as gray as possible and get to where we needed to be as gray as possible. And you know, that was kind of the plan from the beginning. I mean, the other thing is there's ways that you just kind of get training for where if you ever do need to get your hands on something, you can also figure that out, right? Whether you're buying stuff from different people or there's ways of doing anything.
Right.
If you need something, but at that point we weren't even thinking about that. We weren't really worried about that. But we didn't know, you know, right away when we got in the truck and started driving, you're running into all these military checkpoints and there's a lot going on. It's like, you know, day 3, day 4 of the war at this point. It's pretty crazy
Pretty
in
nuts.
that point. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just going to ask. So as you're getting in there, I mean, it's early, and we saw a few things, whether it be through social media or the mainstream media. There was a lot of stuff going around. A lot of it turned out to be false. A lot of it was made up or previously filmed footage, or just there was
Video
some
games.
video game shit. It was wild. Stuff was totally manufactured, and so it was really tough to kind of get a read on what was really happening over there. Except that there were some more authenticated type things that we were seeing, and it was awful. But you're on the, I assume, towards maybe the southern or western border, and you're moving your way through. And we probably can't talk about exactly where, but what were you seeing on your way to Yuri's hometown? What are you seeing with the people? What are you seeing with the countryside? Does it look organized? Has Ukraine mobilized?
It was pretty quiet, to be honest. I mean, it was so early in the war where I think people were not going outside. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know what was going to happen. Everybody was, we didn't see a lot of people. We just saw a lot of kind of military checkpoints, police checkpoints, that kind of stuff. But it's not like there was people running around or anything like that. And even when we got to the town, I remember it was pretty quiet. And again, when we got there, okay, boom, we're there now. We're at Yuri's house. Let's try and, eat something and take a shower, and then let's organize our gear that we brought, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, we had made contact with a humanitarian group that was working, a Ukrainian humanitarian group that was stood up basically a day or two before we got there. And we didn't know anything about this group. They're now our sister organization. They're now Overwatch Ukraine.
Fantastic.
And we've relocated that guy who initially picked us up in the van. He's now here in Chicago. Him and his family have relocated here, and they're running the foundation from here, and still working with us, and still working in Ukraine and stuff. I mean, yeah, a lot's happened since that first time, but we had connected with them. And so it was like, okay, well, the next thing is let's get these supplies and let's go do a med drop, and let's turn these things over to people that need them and get them out to the people at the front and stuff like that. And so we were just moving on to the next thing. We weren't, it's if you start thinking too much about this, that, and the next thing, you just paralyze yourself,
Mm,
and you're just spending way too much time thinking and not actually doing anything.
mm,
And again, we get that stuff organized. We split everything up. We take it there. And when I remember, we walk into that building, and that was probably, there's big moments in your life where you do something that doesn't seem like a big deal, and then it really has a massive effect on like stuff you get into or your future or whatever. And just walking into that building with a few boxes full of medical supplies, and I saw what it reminded me, and I said this, on Sean's show. I said it almost reminded me of like an underground speakeasy,
mm,
where but it was almost like one of those World War I movies or World War II movies where people are just supporting the war, because like World War I, World War II, the fight was like in these towns, whether it's France or
mm.
even in London and stuff, right? I mean, people are just going about their normal day, but the war's there. And it was a place that sold windows and doors, but they had turned it in a couple of days into this like very amazing facility to support the war effort and to support refugees that were moving from where the front was. And I just walked in. I was like, this is really cool, and we can help with this, And I don't know what that meant yet, but I was like, we can definitely use this.
Well, that's I guess that would be the next question is like the mission was to get Yuri home and then also bring in some medical supplies, along with Yuri. You show up, you see this like kind of this buzzing, hustling, bustle, people moving around, all trying to contribute in some kind of way. Are these civilians there, or are they? You said I
Also,
think you. Wow. So it's just not being organized by the government. It's not soldiers in there. It's not logistics where they're bringing in huge trucks with food and, military supplies or anything like that. These are just people that are getting together in order to defend and support their homes and their
yes, yeah,
families, right?
yeah, it was incredible. And you have to think like, so the mission was just to get Yuri home. The first kind of spin off of that was us collecting these medical supplies in the neighboring country and then dropping them off. And then, it's like I said, that snowball, right? Where you just, as long as you're doing stuff, the next thing will come, right? If the
Mm,
ball's rolling, you're going to roll in front of the next thing. And so we're doing that, and we're in that place, and it just was amazing. And you have to think, we have our whole support team back home that's always like, hey, what do you guys need? What's going on? Like,
okay.
in and stuff. And so we're trying to explain this to them, like, hey, we've made a couple of contacts and we're in this place and stuff's going on. Can we get this, or can we make sure this happens? Or can you find out about this for me? And see, like, the heads are spinning now, Zach and I, about what we can do. And the one thing about those people was anything we asked or anything we wanted, their answer was always yes. It was just yes, yes, yes. And that's kind of when they came to us and said, hey, would you guys be interested in going down and talking to the local military commander? We were just like, sure, we're here. Let's go talk to the guy.
That's interesting. That's a question I didn't ask you. You just hit the nail on the head. And I was going to ask about how you were received with all the experiences that you've had. I asked it when you went down to the the southern United States and southeastern United States, and then when you went up to Wisconsin and you walked onto the base there, and how you were received. It sounds like the civilians were like, "Hey, we'll take whatever help we can get, and if any friend of Yuri's is a friend of ours." I don't know
Right.
if that's an accurate statement, but the
Yeah,
fact that now you're getting put in front of military leaders in this town, that had to have been quite surreal.
it was. I mean, Yuri told them who we were. And I think that guy at first was kind of like, okay, let me just see. Let me just talk to these guys. Maybe something will work, maybe something won't. And so we go down there, and of course, you walk in there, and everybody's there. Their buttholes are, it's the pucker factor is
Just
huge.
puckered, yeah. Hmm.
And and we walk in, and we're just sitting there in this guy's office, and the other thing that's important, and I'm sure your viewers and listeners have kind of stumbled across this on other podcasts with other guys, is it's very difficult when you're in another country to communicate effectively with a translator, right? Because so much goes into that communication. It's not just what I'm trying to say, it's how I'm
How
trying to
you,
say it. It's how you comport yourself, how you know, like there's obvious one example is there's that obvious thing it's been shown in movies and stuff many times where um let's say there's a officer like a captain, let's say of a team, right? And he's talking to the guy in Iraq, Afghanistan, the local leader or the local army commander. But
mhm.
there's a guy on the team, the grizzly sergeant, who looks more senior, and that guy wants to talk to the
Talk to that
sergeant. And
guy.
the
Yeah.
officer, like, hey, you don't, like, and so there's that. Well, why do I have to talk to you just because you're the captain? You look like you've, never done anything, kind of thing. So, and that's a real thing. You see that so much in movies and all this because it's true. It happens all the
Okay.
time. And we're sitting there now with a colonel, right? And back in our military days, Zach and I never ran around and hung out with colonels. I mean,
Colonels,
sure,
right?
they're, you met colonels. I've served under colonels. I mean, okay, you know who the colonel is, but like, you don't have that. Like, I'm not sitting down planning an op with a colonel, right?
Right.
And so now we're sitting there in the guy's office and we're just talking back and forth. And I like to get straight to the point, right? Like,
Hmm.
come on, if we're going to do something, let's do something. I don't like all the kind of fluff and all this. And so there's some of that fluff going on. And Zach and I are so funny because he's very nice. His delivery is very nice. And I'm very just blunt.
Okay.
And it works, right? Like it
It's
totally
good cop.
worked. It worked the
Good
whole
cop,
time.
bad cop. Yeah.
Yeah, and it worked when we were training the guys and all this. But at that point, I said, okay, let's find out if this guy's wasting our time or not, and let's show him that we're serious. And so I started asking him, like, hey, okay, tell me about fucking Russian troop movements and stuff.
Hmm.
And I'm looking at the map. He had his maps up, and I'm like looking around, and you could see he was like, whoa, 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 whoa. And then it kind of made him, it just kind of shook him a little bit. And it could have went bad. He could have been like, all
I
right,
was
you
just
guys get out of here, right? But my whole thing was, if he's going to do that anyway, let's just do it now.
let's
Like,
get
let's
it
not,
over with. Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
And he's like, okay, I don't want to talk about that or anything. And so, okay, good, right? He shouldn't have talked about that to me at that moment. He
Great
shouldn't
point.
have.
Great point.
And then soon after that, he turned around and he was like, okay, would you guys be interested in doing a site survey for me? Like, we have all these buildings in the area,
Hmm.
we have guys, different troop placements and defensive positions and stuff. Would you guys do a site survey? So we said yes, and we walked around. He showed us all of his facilities and showed us his guys and what they were doing and how they were kind of set up. And we told him what we liked. We told him what we didn't like. We gave him some suggestions based on kind of how they had stuff set up. And then he goes, okay, here's the deal. I'm going to give you to the major, and he's going to take you to the rest of the locations. Then come back and talk to me in the afternoon.
So
We
be
did
honest with
that.
me. Be honest with me, Mark. Like, how did it really look? I mean, you said you gave him some suggestions, what you liked and what you
Yes,
didn't like.
some of the stuff was good. I mean, again, we were talking about that pucker factor. Here was an example of something that was just not done very well. They had this building that was adjacent, we'll say, or kind of close by to a military building that they had. And this was not a military building, this adjacent building. So it was kind of cool. They had this defensive position set up in there. It was a great idea. It just was executed poorly. They had basically, again, we're talking day 4 of the war
It's
now.
early. Hmm.
Day 4, they had basically a guy at every window. The guys were sleeping on wooden pallets. They were eating out of little hot stove burner type things. And it was, and they were working shifts around the clock and all this. And
Had they been
right,
there? Had they been there a little while, or they just literally just been there a couple days?
they had just started this, but we told them, we said, look, you don't need a guy at every window. Like, you're going to burn these guys out. Like it's early. You've basically just thrown everything at this, and you're just going to burn these guys out. You have to wait and see and have a plan to reinforce that if you need to, but you just can't have all hands on deck all the time, right?
So it's like
And so some of that
poor
stuff,
situational awareness. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, they're freaked out, right? So it's like, get everybody here, and then we had to move a couple of bunkers to better position, and just some of their kind of defensive positions in relation to how you would fire and maneuver and how you would actually defend a position were a little bit off. But again, and this actually came to light. We didn't know this at the time, but he was a tank commander.
Okay.
And his major was a artillery commander. So you have these two guys that are running this basic infantry battalion now.
Yeah.
That don't have experience. And so they're just trying to figure it out. And, the tactics they use over there anyway are very Soviet based and very old and outdated. But I mean, I thought they did a good job. We did give them a lot of our suggestions. Like they had a sniper tower that was in a clock tower. It's like, you watch Saving Private Ryan one too many times. Like you don't do that, right? Like I get it. It's a tall place and all this, but this is not where you put like a sniper position. It's kind of obvious, like that kind of stuff. And so there was some small things that we fixed, some big things that we fixed, but we always kind of told them like, hey, this is good. I like this. Or some of the stuff they did was like half good, and we just added to it to shore it up a little bit. And then we did the rest of the site survey around town because they had all these other positions, and we were talking to the major, and then we went back and met with the colonel again. And he goes, hey, would you guys come back tomorrow morning at 08 and train our guys, train the infantry? And we just kind of like, I just looked over at Zach and we were like, okay. We just said yes. And then we left and we went back to where we were staying. And it was like,
what the fuck are we going to do?
Like, is this legal? Was the first thing we were thinking.
That's a really good question. Yeah.
Like, are we going to go back home and there's going to be ninjas at the airport waiting to grab us or something? Like, can we go to a foreign country and train their military? And look, we're not on a contract. He didn't offer us a contract. There's no money. It's like, hey, we're here for the next 8 or 9 days. If you need help,
we'll help you.
We have some experience. We'll help you, and I think we must have impressed them during that initial meeting and that initial site survey. And we told them like, hey, here's what we're thinking. Like, we can maybe do this. We can maybe help you with this. We can maybe get some of this for your guys. What do your guys need? Where are you lacking? Like that kind of stuff. And I think he saw that we were genuine and that we weren't asking for anything and that we could really help them. We had the experience and we could really help them. And then, we showed up the next day to train those guys.
So let's talk about those guys. So are you talking about training the Ukrainian army or Ukrainian soldiers? Or are we talking about volunteers from the local community? Is it some of both? Or is it like people that are fresh on? Because the way I understand it, as soon as this thing kicked off, there were a couple 100,000 volunteers that enlisted in the army from the Ukrainian population to fight for their country. Correct me if I'm wrong there.
No, that's exactly correct. And that's one of the most admirable stories I've ever heard, I don't know what the numbers were like after 9/11. Like, if you think like 9/12, 9/13, did 200,000 people enlist in the military?
No.
Those 2 years? I don't even think we could get 200,000 people to actually put their name on paper in 2 days.
Yeah, you mean logistically? Like like how do you even facilitate that?
Right. Where for them, I think it was just they showed up and it was like, hey, I'm here. We'll figure out the paperwork later. I'm here, So, and look, I'm not saying that after 9/11, plenty of people joined after 9/11. What I'm saying, did people leave on 9/12 and walk right down to the recruiter's office and sign the paperwork?
Yeah,
right?
So it happened over time. There were hundreds of thousands over time, but over years.
This was overnight. This was overnight.
We had, this is one thing. It's one thing when a country's or another country's invading your country, like they're coming in versus
a totally different thing. And
different thing. Yeah.
It's so admirable and so it's unbelievable, to be standing there in front of those guys. And initially the first guys that we trained were were guys that just walked in and enlisted. Later on that first trip, we ended up training regular army. Now, obviously, we're training regular army and special operations over there and all this kind of stuff. We've kind of snowballed.
It's evolved.
Yeah. And, but it's still, I'll say it over and over. There's a lot of people talking that think we're getting paid a lot of money to do this. We get $0 to do this. We don't have a contract. We don't do, and okay, they're alpha, they're core, their special operations wants our help. Sure, we'll go help them. We help everybody else. We'll go help them, and that, and so, yeah, that first day, it was all just the guys that had signed up that weekend to go fight for their country. And it was like something out of a movie. Me and Zach standing there and looking at this group of guys. It was the first day. It was like one platoon of guys, and we're like a platoon and a half of guys, because I think they just wanted to see what we could do with them, And it was like, all right. And I mean, look, I teach jujitsu every day. I consider myself a decent teacher. I can pass on knowledge, but like, I didn't have a teaching job in the Marine Corps or anything like that. I mean, I trained a lot, but like, I never had a teaching job. But obviously I mean, they weren't learning anything crazy. We taught them basic infantry tactics, basic patrolling, like if you just opened up a Ranger handbook kind of thing, it's all very basic stuff. That's what we were, how to hold a rifle, how to move, how to, if you're patrolling and you're the last man, turn around, like just very basic stuff to start with, because these guys knew nothing.
I was just going to say, man, that you're probably figuring that out as you go, like, how to hold a rifle, like what were they working with when you got there? I mean, were these guys well supplied? Did they have uniforms? Did they have equipment? I mean, what did it look like?
There was no uniforms. We kind of made a joke that they wore the Eastern European tuxedo, which is leather jacket, polo shirt, Adidas tracksuit bottoms, and gym shoes.
I know the look. Yeah, I've seen the look. Yeah.
And I mean, that's what they were. And look, it's 3 inches of snow. It's freezing cold. We're outside, and they were out there,
Wow.
and they didn't have any uniforms. And most of them didn't have rifles. They were using sticks and 2-liter water bottles as a rifle.
Wow.
And, they just, again, 200,000 people join the army. How do you get them uniforms in a day, right?
No,
and they don't have that. And I mean, that goes on to the bigger picture that kind of causes some of these issues is when Russia's your neighbor, you shouldn't be cutting your defense funding just because the old president had business in Russia and was cuddled up to, and then something happens and now you don't have anything, and you don't have an army, and you don't have a well-trained army, and you don't have, supply and all this kind of stuff. But I mean, that's what we were dealing with. And I just remember, like, Zach and I, obviously we got the training set up real quick, and we understood what we were going to teach them and how we needed to start, baby steps and all this kind of stuff. And I remember we got back that first day, and it was such an emotional thing to, you look back on it, you're like, that's cool, we did that. But like, just an emotional thing, seeing these men do that and have that first day and be like, we were a part of that, like we got to be, whether you call it a small part or a big part of that. It's like, you want to talk about impacting people. And people say, yeah, but there's a conflict between you being a humanitarian organization and being a nonprofit, and now you're training foreign army kind of thing.
Soldiers, yeah.
And it's like, well, at that point, those guys were not soldiers. Like, to me, that was a humanitarian mission. These guys, they were going to go to the war whether they were trained or not, right? And to me, sending guys to war when they're not trained, like sending a guy to wash a car when he doesn't know how to wash a car is a bad idea. Sending a guy to war when he's not trained, that's a very bad idea. And, if we could be a small part in getting them ready, to me, that guy's the butcher, he's the baker, he's the candlestick maker of that town. It's a humanitarian effort, in my opinion, to get him ready for what he's about to go and do,
Can't argue that. I don't know how you could, quite frankly, the way you just articulated that. The one of the more interesting parts of this for me is what you just said there about Russia being your neighbor. They have a very, very, let's just say, colorful history of doing exactly what they're doing right now. And they do it with ferocity, and it's ugly. It's always very ugly. But the other thing historically, no matter how you look at it, they're not fucking very good at this. They
No, they're
always
not.
manage to fuck it up, and
Yeah.
whether they can't get enough food to their soldiers, they run out of ammunition. It gets too cold, they can't survive. They go in and they fuck people's worlds up, and then in the end, they end up suffering as much or more than the country they invaded or whatever it is they were trying to do. So as we're talking about this, and the people on the ground there in Ukraine have to know this. The government there has to know this at some level. You obviously you have to know this as you're going in. I just I wonder what the mentality is on the ground there from the army, from the civilians, and what the action plan is in order to get these guys out of there. Because what I'm seeing and what we're seeing now is this thing just seems to kind of keep going on and on and on. And we, I mean, while you're there the first time, it was like 47 or $60 billion had already been sent over there, was in the process of being sent over there.
Right.
Um, and now we're at 1.7 trillion in this new bill, this new thing that just got signed into.
Yeah, I think of the 1.7 trillion. I think 135 billion of it is Ukraine.
Right. So, as you're going, okay, so what's happened since then? Is the army trained up? Do they have the gear and the supplies they need? Is there humanitarian aid to the people on the ground? What are we seeing happening in these towns? You've been back there 5 or 4 more times since this time. What's the progress look like, if any?
Yeah, it's very complex, right? And I mean, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you. It's my opinion from what I see and what I read and what I'm looking at. Um, and I'm sure anybody could take however long it's going to take me to explain this. And we have this part of the conversation. You could take any clip and make it sound like I love Ukraine or I hate Ukraine or this, that, or the next thing. It's not that simple, right? Right off the bat, I'll say I don't support the Ukrainian government. I don't have a dog in their fight. I don't really care. If Russia fights with Ukraine and does this and does that, I don't care, and I really don't care. What I care about is the people.
Hmm.
I care about, like, look, if you're going to have a war, if you and I have a problem and we go out, we have a legit problem, we go outside and we punch each other's faces in until the problem's resolved. That's a thing. That's okay. That's you could say that's natural. You could say that's normal. People have been fighting for however many years, and it does create resolution. Sometimes it's bad resolution, sometimes it's good resolution. War is just a thing that people do, right? I'm not a warmonger. I don't think we should be trying to get into wars or this, that, or the next thing. But if you're going to have a war, it has to be a legit thing. And I don't think the way Russia's doing this is legit. I don't think their reasons for doing it are legit. I think it's a power grab. It's obviously it's not done with honorable intentions.
It looks
right?
like bullying, man. It just looks like
Yeah,
bullying. That's all it is.
and whatever his reasons are or aren't, it's the function, the way he's doing it. It's not an honorable thing to do and way to do it. So, but for me, the complexity starts coming in as far as like, well, what can Ukraine do now? It seems like Ukraine is running around with its hand out, just looking for money. That money's going to solve this problem.
Yeah,
and
that's what it looks like to me, man.
And some of it could be,
it's pandering.
We need to get as much money as we can because when this does get resolved, then we have to rebuild and we need to do this and we need to do that. And
okay, fair enough. They're front loading it.
My whole thing is this. Let's say I'm at war with a bigger, badder enemy and I come to you and I need help. And you're my ally. You've always been my ally, let's say. I mean, and look, not too long ago, when you're talking Obama, Biden, and take the politics out of it, where I'm not talking about politics, I'm talking about just the administration that was there.
Okay.
There was a lot of corruption when it comes to Ukraine. Ukraine is a corrupt country because it has to be, because it can't get much done unless it is corrupt. And it does, like, okay, look, I'll give you $100, but you have to give 10 of it back to me. Right? I mean, that's a deal that happens all over the world all the time. And is it corruption? Yes. Should it be done? No, but it's just, that's how stuff works.
It's the way it works.
And that's how they've done stuff for as long as they've been a country. And that's definitely going on now as well. But my whole thing is, if I come to you and I ask for that $100, okay, well, you want 10 of it back. That's fine. you should then come to me and say, with the 90 that you're keeping, you need to get some shit done with that 90.
That
right?
seems fair. Seems fair.
Like you need to get it done. And to me, you mentioned it. Russia's not good at this. Russia at this point is a lot of their guys are drinking too much. There's a lot of drugs going on. They're using criminals. They're using untrained people to be the cannon fodder for their attrition. You mentioned it. This is how they do stuff. It's all about attrition with them. They don't care, right? And that's one thing about our military, take away all the stuff that happened in the past with other wars. Our military does take care of its war fighters and does a good job of it. And, does give us the gear and the equipment and the mission set to get stuff done, right? Where that's not happening in Russia. And they're just not good at this. And Ukraine also is not good at this. They haven't had the training because their defense budget, there's been no defense budget really because they've been in bed with Russia all this time. So why would you spend money on defense?
Right.
Now that's coming back to bite them. And yes, everyone's talking about the Javelin missiles, and what the Javelin missiles have done in Ukraine has been amazing. But like, to think that Ukraine just popped up in February, gets handed a bunch of Javelin missiles, and all of a sudden they're fantastic at using them. There's been guys training them for many months. I know for a fact, as far back as October of last
21.
year, of when before the war started, that there were guys training Ukraine on the Javelin missile system, and quite rightly so. And they've done a fantastic job with that. But it's like, at some point, you can't have it both ways. You cannot say, we need help, we need help, we need help, we need money, Russia's killing us, we can't fight them. And then at the same time say like, well, we're winning this war, we're winning this war, we're winning this war.
It's and like, we need more money.
And we need more money, right? And so it's like, it's just complex on so many levels, because it's like, okay, here's 135 billion, and what, you need more? You need more. Well, how are you not winning this war with 100? Is Russia getting 135 billion? I know China's giving them money. I know Iran's working with them, but like, is it 135 billion? And if it is, it's clearly not working for Russia. So why isn't it working for you? And I know there's some constraints, right? Where we probably have some restrictions on them where it's like, look, if we give you this and we give you that, you can't fire it into Russia. You can't do this. You can't do that, because we don't want any kind of other, like, we'll help you fight Russia, but don't do anything that's going to bring everyone else into this, right?
Yeah, and I totally get that. I mean, the United States has faced that when they've gone into other areas, right? When they go in, it's like, hey, there's certain rules that we have to follow here in order to be here and keep everybody, those that are on the team, and without stirring up any other shit outside of this that we don't want to be brought in. Like, I get that too.
Totally fair. But at the same time, then I would have the conversation. If it was me, I'd have the conversation and say, yes, I am putting these limitations on you, but I'm also still really helping you, and you need to do something with that, right?
Like, there's got to be accountability,
and we need to see results as well, right? And from what I've seen in Ukraine on a troop level, down to the very man, right? And like you said, we've been there 5 times now, and many of our guys have rotated to the front, fought, and come back a couple times, right? And we're getting a lot of really cool after-action reports on the tactical side and on the medical side of what our training's actually doing for these units on the small level that we're doing it, right? When we came in and we met with those guys on that first trip, again, we're talking February, and let me paint this time frame. We're talking February. Those guys had no training. They had no basic training, like no boot camp, no infantry school, none of that, right? No pipeline. We're not even talking about like a BRC or a BUDS, or we're not talking about any of this, right? Ranger school, none of that. We're talking about just a basic pipeline to get you to be an infantry soldier. They didn't have any.
A couple 100,000 of them all right now that have to get this, whatever it is.
Right. And this is February. So, okay, let's just take our guys. Now you have March, April, May. We're in January of the next year. If you go by the Marine Corps, it's 3 months of basic training, right? And 2 months of infantry school. And you have a basically trained infantry Marine that can join an infantry battalion, do a workup, and go to war, right?
Anywhere in the world. Yep.
Anywhere in the world, right? And I talked about it before. We don't need to follow that model. You could do 6 weeks basic training and 4 weeks of infantry tactics or something. Give them something though, some level of training that you're running these guys through, and send everybody through there, because the guys that you had in February could have been ready for March. The guys in March, April, and it's going to snowball. Now you have some guys that have basically been at the war and doing this stuff since February that still are not trained.
We're almost into this a year, and effectively, you've just got guerrilla fighters out there that are taking orders from somebody who's been there maybe just a little longer than them.
Right. And my whole thing is, you could have been bringing the new guys in March while the guys that came in February were out. You could have been training those guys in March, training those guys that were coming in April. Now they're at the point where they're not getting so many volunteers, and they have to draft, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just because of times went by. All the people that volunteered usually volunteer in the beginning, obviously. And then some as they become of age or whatever. But there needs to be that training pipeline. And look, I mean, I've said it before. I'll put my hand up. I'll write it. I'll facilitate it. I'll help with it. But I don't understand why it's not there, and I don't understand why they're not doing that. And we've trained a few different groups now, different units, different groups, different kind of types of their warfighter, and their tactics are very old. And their commanders come from that old school kind of Soviet style, back when things were USSR. And I think a lot of it is, and you see this all the time in life, a lot of it is, well, we don't know how to fix it, so we're just not going to fix it because we don't know how, right? Like they see the results. Obviously, they have an ineffective fighting force that has incredible heart, incredible passion, and most of them that have volunteered, they've done an incredible thing for their country. And it's like, could you imagine if the U.S. military had 200,000 people? Imagine what kind of war fighting machine would be created with 200,000 passionate, full-hearted Americans with training could become.
I say this in jest, but it's total world domination. You could do whatever.
And I mean, the same thing could happen in Ukraine if you just trained them properly. And I think the reason they're not is because they just don't know how. And to me, it's like, if you don't know how, it's just because you don't know how. Someone can show you. And I'm not saying I have all the answers, but do something. And if I'm your something, or there's another guy like me that's your something, and look, why aren't you contacting the Green Berets?
That's exactly what I was thinking.
And have those guys train them. Have those SF groups go out there but let them do that. And I know some of that is going on. It is going on. There are groups that are rotating into Poland, and there are some Ukrainian groups that have went to Germany and are working with those. And me saying that's not any kind of secret thing. I mean, if you know where to look, you can find that out. It's not like I'm saying anything that you can't find out on any kind of open source if you look. But you have to do something, and you can't just walk around with your hand out saying, look, we need more money. We're fighting hard, but we need more money. No, you need more training at this point. You don't need more money.
I think that one of the questions, so as you've continually gone back, we've given them more money. There's been some training that's happened from you and some training that may be happening on the fringes. What about, and you talked about the javelins. Are these, and when you went out there the first time, they were wearing leather jackets, track pants, and collared shirts or whatever. Have you seen equipment show up for them? Do they have medical supplies? Do they have food? Do they have the things they would need outside of the training? Or is it still look like a little bit of a clusterfuck?
I took it. I took training. I took gear. I took medical equipment. When we came back after that first trip, I was heartbroken that those guys didn't have uniforms and didn't have gear, because I saw them work every day for me. I saw the effort that those guys put in, and I respect those guys and love those guys for that. And they didn't know what they were doing, and they gave every speck of attention and every ounce of effort. And I said, okay, let's go back. Let's show them that we're serious and we're committed to them. And we were able to raise some money. We haven't raised a ton of money. It's kind of like the same with the hurricanes. We can do a lot with a little. And after we came back the first time, we raised like 100,000, 120,000, and I bought uniforms for that whole company and plate carriers for that whole company and IFACs for that whole company. And we went back on the second trip, and we went back with Tommy, our medical director, who's an incredible Army medic, and I mean, he's just unbelievable. And he stood up medical platoons, and we trained a bunch of medics, and we use very high speed IFACs for these guys. We're not sending them over cheap stuff. We got them tourniquets, IFACs, uniforms, plate carriers, and we showed up and we handed it to them from our hand to their hand.
So this stuff that you're talking about are basics. This is every infantryman is you this in the U.S. military. They're going to be out there. You're sending a person to the front line. You're sending a person into war. They are going to be shot at, blown up, and any number of things. Are facing elements. The elements of weather. I mean, we're into the winter now. There's so many things that go into this. The fact that they don't have these basic supplies is a little shocking. I mean, I've heard some of this story before, but people listening to this, when you think about all the billions of dollars that have been sent over there, to think that the guys that volunteered, that stood up, they sent their women and children wherever they could send them to so that they could go to the front lines and put their life on the line for their country and for their families that don't have this stuff is absolutely mind-boggling to me at this point. Even, because if you can get it in there, then certainly they can get it there. We can get it there. I mean, the United States is already in this war. Like we're already deep. We're neck deep in it with the amount of finance that we've sent. The only thing we're not there is we don't have boots on the ground. We don't have boots.
Yeah, and look, it's kind of crazy. I mean, look, I could jump on every podcast and talk about how I got 3,000 pairs of boots for Ukrainian soldiers, and I put uniforms on Ukrainian soldiers, and whatever, IFACs and plate carriers and all this, and it sounds very good, but like to even say that, it makes me sick because why am I doing it? Like why do I have, like
I got you.
I get it. It's a great thing for us to do. We're plugging a hole there, and we saw a need and we jumped in. And when we showed up, I talked about this on Sean's show the first time. This is what made me want to get those guys gear. Was Zach and I were there that first time, and the guys had nothing. They were putting their magazines in their pockets for their AKs and in their tracksuit pockets. And it was like, man, let's see if could we make them a plate carrier? Could we make them like, something? And we went and we talked to the guys that were at that little humanitarian organization. We said, could you get us a group of seamstresses? And so they did that, and we're talking to them, these little ladies, and we're trying to explain to them, like, we want you to make a chest rig, right? And they're like, what? Like I hem trousers and stuff. Like, well, here, I want you to make a chest rig, and we're trying to draw it, and we're trying to show them like images of a chest rig and stuff, and they came back with a couple of prototypes, and they were terrible.
I'm not surprised.
Like, this is not going to work. And so I had remembered, like, from doing some vehicle ops and stuff, just having a bandolier, right?
Mm-hmm. Old school.
With 3 magazines, like old school bandolier, because it's comfortable in a, if you're kind of slick or something, and it's comfortable in a vehicle, and it's not all, you don't have all this gear on. And so we made some bandoliers, which was a more simpler design than them having some like Rhodesian type looking thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the woman came back, and it was perfect. And she was bawling her eyes out. We were crying. And then it was like, okay, just make these till your fingers bleed, And so that's what we passed out to the guys. And and she's still making them, she's still making them. And it's just crazy. And it was like, okay, now we need to get these guys some real gear. And you just think, and it's like, why does she have to make those? Why does she have to take her little team of friends and make these? It's $135 billion, and you can't get these guys a chest rig. It's weird. I have guys. It's incredible. My email. I mean, I could show you these emails of guys saying, "Look, I have 2 extra mag pouches and an old chest rig. I'm going to send it to you.
Mm-hmm.
I have guys that say, and they send it to us. And I have guys that say, this is my only chest rig. I've been thinking about getting a new one anyway. I'm going to send you this one and it'll force me to go out and buy a new one. Right. And we take that stuff and we hand it to a Ukrainian soldier who goes to the front lines and uses it. And that's a cool story that guy that sent that email mailed it to me. And then I hopped on a plane and took it over there by myself. It's not sitting in some warehouse somewhere. It's not, I hand it to the guy that's going to use it on the front lines in the war for his country. That's an amazing, romantic, beautiful story.
But it's still not right.
It should be unnecessary.
Right.
That story shouldn't exist, and especially now, not with this kind of money that's being spent. It's like, I get it. These HIMARS and these javelins and whatever else that we're supplying at such a high level that maybe we don't get to see, that stuff's important. But can we start with boots for the guys in December? Like, can we start with that? Right? Can we start with boots? And go from there. Because if I can buy 3,000 pairs of boots and get that stuff over there,
Uncle Sam should be able to do it too. So should they.
I mean, and I know Uncle Sam can. When I was in the Marine Corps, I ever wanted a pair of boots, they were there. I went down to Supply, I could get anything I wanted, and there was never an issue. There was never an issue. So we can do it. And for that kind of money, we definitely can do it. I mean, I wonder what the supply budget is for the U.S. military as far as boots go. I guarantee you it's a lot less than $135 billion,
Well, yeah. So why don't we keep that money in the United States, pay American workers, pay American factories, pay American, textile companies, growers that grow the stuff, to put it together and send it over there. If we're going to send them anything, let's send them things that can be useful and that actually makes a difference at the end of the day.
And I mean, it's funny. I mean, it sounds kind of fickle because obviously I run an NGO and I run a nonprofit, but it's like, if you gave me $1 million of that 135 billion, you know how far I would stretch that $1 million? I mean, put it this way. Here's what we do right now. If I go out tomorrow and I raise $100,000 for IFACs, we use very high speed IFACs, that are basically the special operations level IFACs. And this goes for listeners too. If you're going to buy an IFAC for your home, your car, for yourself at the range, whatever the deal is, don't skimp on money, right? Don't skimp on money. Go out and buy the best, because if you ever need that piece of gear, you want it to be something like that. If you ever need that piece of gear, you want it to be the best. If it's a sling for your rifle and you don't have a ton of money to spend, okay, you can get by with a sling that's not the best sling, right? Or not from one of the top 3 companies out there, you can get by. But if it's an IFAC and you ever have to use it, you want the best. And my whole thing is, we're not going to take crappy IFACs over to Ukraine and give it to those guys, because they literally are going to take it from our hand and go use it, right?
They're going to use it, yeah.
Right. But here's the deal. If you give me $100,000, I'm going to spend probably 99,500 of that on IFACs. And then I'm going to get my credit card out and fly 5 guys over there to go deliver them on my own personal credit card and figure out how to pay those airfare tickets later. We're not taking money off of this. I'm not taking that. If that $100,000 was raised for medical supplies, it goes to medical supplies.
That's what it's being spent on. Yeah.
I'm not spending 60 of it on medical supplies and 40 of it on other stuff. It's like, that's not how it goes. And so it's like, and I get it with us, with the US giving it to Ukraine, there does have to, 10% for the big guy and all this kind of stuff. That happens. But even with 10% for the big guy on 135 billion, there's enough there to make sure everybody has what they need, especially at that warfighter level.
It's a gross amount of money. And again, it's just, I think we've heard these numbers for so long. I think people just kind of like, they're desensitized to it now. It's just more dollars. We've just printed more money and we've sent it over there. But to have that perspective, of what you can do with, again, doing more with less. But again, to your point, it's like, well, these are basics. It's not like you're sending you're talking about sending over like technology. You're talking about shoes. You're talking about footwear, right? And first aid supplies for people that they're probably going to have to use at some point. It's not an
Right. And look,
insurance policy.
the U.S. military can even get that stuff in much easier than I can. I have to logistically figure out ways to get that in so that it's not sitting in a warehouse, so that our guys can get their hands on it before anybody takes it. I have to put people in place and creative ways to where like my stuff doesn't get rat fucked and nobody's picking through it first. I mean, there's,
I can't imagine.
I have to deal with all of this stuff so that we don't have those problems. Why can't the U.S. military do this? And I mean, I don't know. You could probably change the model, and I'm not just saying it's me. There's other NGOs out there, like if you know, like Chad Rubishaw and
Yep.
Tim Kennedy, they're Save Our Allies. We've worked with them on stuff before, and they're incredible people with an incredible organization. If you find organizations like that, and you're the military, write the check to those guys. You know, they're kind of just like us. They'll stretch that money. They'll do far more than that money than if you just write a check to a foreign government. And then, you know what, if you want to put a bunch of oversight on the NGOs for accountability, then do that.
Do it.
But I guarantee you, these American NGOs with these American veterans, not just ours, if you wrote the checks to us, we would get stuff done. You know why? Because we get stuff done.
You're trained to do that. That's my next question after, sort of all the things that we've been kind of working through, the spends and the what they get, what they don't get, what you're being able to do, what we've talked a little bit about some of our, some of the things that we may have, teams like the Green Berets doing in neighboring countries and whatever, and we're trying to maybe make some change. What has to happen for this to turn, in your opinion? What has to happen for the tide to change, or for a push one way or another to happen? You mentioned training, of the soldiers, but is it more than that? Is it bigger than that? What's your take on this?
Well, first of all, I don't think it's our responsibility to fix it. I mean, I know we're treating this, or I hope we're just trying to treat this as a proxy war, and as long as we're weakening Russia, it's helping us somehow. The initial response to that, well, to what expense, right? And at some point here, we're gonna have to, Ukraine has to go out and push these people out of their country, right? I mean, if someone walks into your studio right now and won't leave, you can't really, I'm in Chicago, you can't really say to me, Mark, help me get this person out of the studio. At some point, you have to get up off your chair, put your headphones down, and remove that person from your studio, right? So Ukraine has to do that. Now, what is going to enable that? I don't know the answer. I mean, if here's the thing: the longer it goes on, and we keep giving them money, why would you force them out?
Yeah, it's just a money grab,
right? I mean, you're going to keep giving me money, and here's the thing: Russia's not good at it. It's not like Russia's annihilating them. Russia, I mean, look, it's probably about equal. From what I've kind of read and looked at, there's all kinds of numbers. I've done the legwork of looking. There's all kinds of estimates, but it seems pretty even when you look at some of the unbiased numbers as far as like casualties. So it's not like anyone's winning this. Ukraine is not winning this war, right? Ukraine's winning the love when it comes to public opinion, but they're not winning the war. And so, for them to win it, maybe if they get the hard lesson of no more money's coming, so we need to figure this out, maybe that's what does it. Maybe Russia pulls out doing something. I mean, the best thing that I think to end it would be Ukraine making a deal, but I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, I think that's the best way to resolve it. I'm not saying that's what they should do. I'm just saying I think that's probably the best way to resolve it. But at the same time, why would they? They're receiving a lot of money off of this situation, and they're not really paying a huge, I mean, I don't want to say that lightly. Obviously, there's a lot of civilian deaths and a lot of their people dying, but like their country's not being annihilated, so there's no rush now.
Yeah, there's this whole concept that I think I've heard you talk about. It's something that I've talked with other people about with regard to what we see happening with, these Russian army will move in and they'll massacre a town. They do what the Russian army does.
Yeah.
They sit there for a little while, and then for whatever reason they leave. And then, those families or those people that were part of that town that had to get out of there, that survived, that found a place to go, they come back in. And so it's like a schoolyard bully going in and just beating the hell out of the kids on the playground, so that they can sit around and smoke cigarettes and drink beer or whatever on the playground for as long as they want to, or as long as they can, until the beer and the cigarettes run out, and then they leave because they're bored.
Let me add to that, in that you're exactly right. They go in, they do what they do, and then most of the time they just have trouble then supplying that line, right? Like
which is why they're not good at this. They've never been good at this.
So then they pull out. But then Ukraine moves in and says that they then took back that town, or the fancy word they use is liberated that town. And it's like, and they count that as a win, right? Like, and you'll see it on reports, oh, Ukraine took back this area or took back that. They didn't take back anything. What happened was Russia left. And so here's the thing. Russia's clearly not interested in keeping that territory, because let's say they're not good at that, right? Let's say I'm not good at chess. You and I are going to start playing chess. You say, Mark, let's play chess a lot together. I go, well, I don't know how to play chess. I'm not that good. Or maybe I know how to play, but I'm not good. If you and I are going to play chess, I have a choice. We're going to play chess once a day for a month. I'm either going to just take a hammer in every day for a month and still be crappy at chess, or I'm going to try and get good at it so I can beat you at some point, right? So
it makes perfect sense.
I mean, of course. And so Russia right now, they're not really interested, in my opinion, in taking this area. They tried to come in within a couple of days, and they thought if they could take Kyiv, it was going to be over. And then when that didn't happen, they've entered into this attrition thing, it seems like. If they were going to be good at this and they wanted to take over these areas, they would get good at supplying their lines. They would get it. They'd figure it out, right? And like you said, in war, in their history, they've never really cared about taking over the land and holding these positions like we do in the US military, where, hey, if we take this hill, if we take this valley, if we take this town, we're going to hold it, right? And we have specific units in our military that are designed to take it, and specific units that are designed to hold it, right?
Hold it, yep.
And they just don't have that, and they don't care. So in my mind, their action is showing me they don't really care, not because they can't do it, because they're not even trying to do it.
Yeah, that's mind-boggling. I mean, it shouldn't be, though, because this is historically what they do.
Right.
But like, what is the point? Why are they there, and what is the intention in the end?
To claim that you're winning then when they retreat and you pull in, and it's not even a retreat, when they just withdraw, I guess.
They just moved. Yeah, they just moved somewhere else.
And then for you to move in, it's like we're sitting watching the game. You're sitting in the comfy seat. You get up to go take a piss, and I sit in your seat, and I say, I like took your seat by force or whatever. It's like, no, you just got up and went to the bathroom. I just sat in it, like
you didn't liberate my chair.
I didn't liberate the chair, and that's kind of the propaganda that's coming out. And I think that's actually hurting the effort, because the civilians kind of look at it, oh, look, and then they show the videos of the guys rolling down the street in like an APC or in a truck or something, and kids waving flags and stuff, like they're liberating these towns, like what happened in France or something. It's like in World War II, and it's like, that's not what's happening. Like, nobody's fighting for these towns.
That perspective, I think, is a very important one for people to understand. When they turn on their 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 11 o'clock news or whatever and see the stuff, or they're scrolling through their social media feeds, it's very frustrating. It's extraordinarily frustrating. I can't imagine how frustrating it is for you. But you've already articulated your why, and that is you don't care about Russia, you don't care about Ukraine, and you did a good job of articulating what it is, and it's the people, and it's those guys, and it's those families, and it's that seamstress, and it's the baker, the butcher and the candlestick maker that's out over there trying to have a life in a country that they've grown up in, and have a family, and just have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in the best way they can in their situation.
Right.
So I wonder, man, what's next for Overwatch in terms of going back, and what do you hope to get accomplished on the next trip? Because you've already mentioned, like, you're going back. What is the mission? Has it changed? Is it the same? What can you tell us?
Yeah, so we're actually, this month we're going to be preparing. We have a training trip with the team that's going to go over. We don't just go over there with Overwatch now, and we're growing, and we're trying to bring in more money and do more things. We're not resting on our past experience, our past training, or anything like that. The guys we have are fantastic. We have tier 1 level guys, and then guys from all over the soft community that have incredible experience, and have done. They're just fantastic. They're savages, and they're smart, and they're very good at what they do, and they've been out for various years. They've been out. We're training to different levels, but my thought now is, as we grow and we expand, I want to invest in those guys and get the best out of them. And so we're all going to train together. We're going to train for our missions, and we're going to get better at what we do. So wherever we go, whether it's Ukraine, Africa, or somewhere in the US, and we hit the ground, we're better than we were the last time,
Yeah, I'm chuckling because what you're doing with your team, with your army, I put that in air quotes, of guys, is the same thing that you're saying the armies of Ukraine need to do for their own people in order to get better so that they can make progress. It seems like such a simple concept. So, but yeah, again, I just chuckle when I hear you, because it's ridiculous that isn't happening, or in the way. I mean, it could be much simpler. And again, you said there's a lot of reasons, or a lot of things that could be getting in the way of that. I don't know. It's not for
Yeah,
me
and
to
I mean,
say.
to me, like, training's everything. I mean, look, whether we're talking about what I'm doing with Overwatch, so like what you're talking about with your gym, or
Mhm.
whatever, it's like training is everything, right? The way you train and how you train. I mean, I could tell the guys, like, for example, I could tell the guys, hey, because we have guys all over the country. Train on your own. Here's some drills we want you to do. Here's some things we want you to work on. Here's, a level of fitness you need to be at for what we do, all this kind of stuff. Um, Train on your own. I could say we're all going to get together and we're going to train amongst ourselves, and that will get us, I think, to a higher level than the example I first laid out. But we're even going outside of ourselves, and we're going to go and work with Kyle Morgan and his company. So it's someone else training us, someone from the outside who Kyle and I are connecting, and he knows our mission. He knows what we're doing down to very detailed specifics. And his expertise and his experience level is going to be able to make the training that he provides us very specific, so that it's not us training each other. It's having someone outside training us, and giving us that focus and a different perspective. And, that way, because here's the deal. If you donate $1 to us, we're responsible for that dollar. We're going to take it to Ukraine and buy this. We're going to help relocate a family. We're going to go to Africa and do this or that. And it's like, it's not for fun, right? It's serious things that we're doing. It's very important work. It's often very dangerous work. It's tiring work, and you need to be at a level to do this kind of thing. And so investing in the team, and making sure that we're all on the same page and we're getting better will only make our organization better.
It's commendable, man. And shout out to Kyle Morgan and the Blue Bearing Group out there. I mean, ex Delta guy. I mean, the stuff that you guys will be able to get from him will be invaluable, right? And then obviously taking it to, the people that need the training at the level they need it, and you're meeting them with wherever they're at that particular time. By the time you get back, and be able to do that effectively, is commendable, man. I mean, and bringing the team together and being able to expand it, and also giving back, reinvesting in it. It's ironic, just so much irony in that's what's happening for you, for this nonprofit organization that, again, you've clearly articulated so many things, but this isn't a fucking hobby.
No.
This is a mission, right? And this is not just a bunch of guys running around out there being cowboys. And, there could be some people out there that may want to think otherwise, going back to all the things that were happening in Afghanistan. And there was a lot of bad press about that. But at the end of the day, lives were saved. You saw those lives, and the impacts that were made across the board and on families and people that used to work with U.S. military, and now you're doing the same. We're just continuing that process through Overwatch. You've talked about how you're going to do it and what you're doing. Look, man, I guess the what I would leave us with, or what I would kind of wrap up with, is for people that want to somehow be involved in this. They can't necessarily be boots on the ground with you and go, but you mentioned like they have plate carriers, or they have mag pouches or holsters, or belts or whatever. Or if it's making a donation, or if it's just maybe serving in the administrative aspect or role somewhere, I imagine you could probably use help everywhere as this thing continues to grow and pick up steam and momentum. What do you want people to know about that, man? How can they reach out? How can they find out more?
Yeah, I mean, for us, we're growing, right? I mean, we're going in January or February back to Ukraine. We have some stuff we're doing, on other continents this year. The natural disaster season will be happening, 2023, and the only way that we can get stuff done is through donations, right? I mean, we are a nonprofit, we are a 501c3, and I mean, that's kind of the biggest way. As we grow, everything needs to grow, including the coffers that when we get a dollar in, the dollar goes back out, right? And so we need dollars going back out for us to get any work done. We are trying to build a kind of civilian volunteer group so that we can do a lot more stuff in other local areas and stuff as well. So there's intake forms for the soft guys that want to join our task force teams, and for regular volunteers as well. That's on the website. You can fill out one of those intake forms. The only thing I'll say is don't fill out the task force intake unless you do have a soft background, because we do verify everything. We do vet everybody, so you're not going to sneak through, right? We're gonna. And I get it. People like to go do the sexy stuff, but a lot of that sexy stuff is not sexy. It might look cool on TV or hearing about it on a podcast, but it's not always fun when you're there doing it, right? For a bunch of different reasons. But yeah, we do need help there. Donations of gear. I mean, look, if you give a plate carrier, I will put that plate carrier in the hands of a guy that will use it, like in the hand of an end user for sure, right? It's not going to go sit in a warehouse. We're not sending it over and someone else is going to end up taking it and it's going to get stolen. Like me or one of the guys on the team will hand it to a man who will put that on and go use it. So that's pretty unique, I think, to what we do. I mean, we took $100,000 worth of IFACs over in carry-on luggage, and we just took enough guys to hand deliver it, because I know if I would have sent those IFACs over, a bunch of them would have went missing, and not only did the guys not get that gear, but people's money would get stolen, right? And so it's like that's kind of the extremes that we go to make sure every bean gets accounted for. But yeah, donations are an incredible way to help, and if anybody wants to partner with us, I mean, we the other thing we do is when we buy anything, equipment or gear or things that we're going to do on a humanitarian level, we buy from veteran-owned U.S. companies. We're not going to China. We're not going to some of this other stuff. Everything we spend goes right back to veterans who have fought for this country and who have started businesses and they're trying to help other people. So it's like my whole thing is I want this trickle down kind of cyclone of veterans helping each other and veterans going out and helping the community, whether it be here in the US or overseas, to who needs it. So yeah, anybody that wants to partner with us, we're more than welcome to have you and to have you on board.
Good to know. So website is overwatchfoundation.org. Is that what it is?
Overwatch Foundation USA.org.
Gotcha. And I know you have an Instagram handle, and so does the foundation.
Yeah, the Overwatch Foundation. And then my Instagram handle is Mark Turner BJJ, and everything's on there. Links to the website, and like I have a Patreon on there too. That every dollar that comes in on the Patreon goes to the Overwatch Foundation, and we just started an Overwatch Foundation shop where you can get like hats and T-shirts. We're going to do a different T-shirt every month. So you can support the Overwatch Foundation by, kind of getting the limited edition monthly T-shirt, and you get a T-shirt and we get a donation. So
fantastic, man. Well, we'll get all the links in this podcast on all the different platforms and all the different channels, man. Mark, this was more than I expected it to be. I was very anxious to talk to you, and I'm hopeful that we'll just get this story out to more people and your message out to more people. And My hat's off to you. Keep doing what you're doing, man. I appreciate you, and I imagine there's a lot of people around the world and around the country that do as well. So, at risk of overdoing it, thank you. Appreciate you, man.
No, hey, thank you for having me. I mean, look, you could be talking to anybody else, and you took the time to hear our story and to dig into what we're doing. It's invaluable. Like I said, I mean, the story is an incredible thing. And I said to you before, if it wasn't my story, I'd still think it was. If it wasn't our story, I'd still think it was incredible. So the fact that you wanted to be involved and hear it and share it it's unbelievable to me. So thank you.
Oh, you're more than welcome, man. Thanks.